Hello, welcome to Bible Buzz number 20. We are on the question of, can you take the mark of the beast? Can a Christian take the mark of the beast and still be saved? This is a question that has come up a number of times. And unfortunately, this question has caused some confusion for certain people. There are teachers out there that are teaching that you can take the mark of the beast. One that I find very surprising is John. Um, let's see here. Let me just pull that up for you. Pull up this quote here. But John MacArthur, I saw the video myself. It was one of those things that I was kind of surprised. Would John MacArthur actually say that? He's a good teacher. There's some things I don't agree with the man. Obviously, I'm not a Calvinist, etc. But he's certainly a scholarly man. And the question came up. The question was, my question is, once the person takes the mark, is there any possibility of him coming to Christ? And John answered, and again, I saw this with my own eyes. He said, yes, I think in the 7 year tribulation coming in the future, the tribulation is a 7 year period, right? The rapture of the church, 7 year tribulation, then Christ returns, sets up his kingdom. And he says, and I think the answer to that is yes. Otherwise, there'd be no salvation of anybody in the end of the tribulation. So I'm really surprised that he and there are a number of others that are saying this, and I'm not trying to single out John MacArthur. Again, my goal is never to throw anybody under the bus, but the question: can a Christian or can anybody take the mark of the beast? And according to what it says in Scripture, and still be saved. Well, let's take a look at what Scripture actually says. Again, that is always going to be our benchmark for what is true when it comes to spiritual matters. When it comes to really any matter, what does Scripture have to say about it? All right. And here we're going to find in Revelation 14. It says, then the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night who worships the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. All right, so it doesn't sound like there's really any leeway. Now, there are three things that have to happen. You have to worship the beast and his image and receive the mark. So it would seem that it's a combination of those three things. Now, I believe that the mark of the beast is actually going to be a genetic transformation. And I base that on a few passages. One of the very first and most important, I believe, is in Genesis 3:15, where God is speaking to Satan, and he himself says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Now, again, he's speaking to Satan, and what does he say? We know that the woman has seed. That's very obvious. A woman has an egg that is a seed. It has DNA inside of it. Obviously, when it mingles with the seed of a man, those two combine to make a zygote or a fully fertilized egg, which is, of course, going to grow into an adult human being. Um, but it says that Satan has seed as well. And that is, again, why I wrote my book called Corrupting the Image on this very theme. You guys can go ahead and check that out at my website if you're interested, douglashamp.com/store, and you can get Corrupting the Image or on Amazon as well. But um, and of course, you can watch the videos on YouTube as well. But what the point here is that Satan has seed. And what I see happening is when we go to Genesis chapter 6, there we see the sons of God coming down. And it says that they were looking at the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. The Hebrew word there is tovot, which means they were good. My take on that is that they were good for something. In other words, these angels, these fallen angels, were not just saying, "Oh, how pretty she is. I wish I could, have a little picket fence and raise a family." I believe that they were looking at them as being tovot. In other words, they were good. It could be that they were pretty, but the word can just simply mean that they were good for a function, and I would understand that to mean that they were good for having babies in order to create this hybrid race. So here we have the beginning of this hybrid race. It says there were giants on the earth in those days. There, the Hebrew word is Nephilim. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Now, think about it. Only 8 people made it out alive during the time of the flood. Now, it's interesting. Did everybody become corrupted? Well, that seems to be what the text says here. God says, "I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air. For I am sorry that I have made them." I mean, this is pretty radical what God is saying, and He says, the earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. So to me, it really sounds like all flesh had become corrupted as a result of these fallen angels coming down. And the only people that were not would be the people that got on the boat, basically 8 people. And it sounds like everybody else had been corrupted. In other words, they all had some kind of a Nephilim DNA, had this angelic DNA. That's what it sounds like to me. Now, the other place that we read about these Nephilim is in Numbers chapter 13. So if we go to Numbers chapter 13, here the 12 spies come back and they say, yeah, it's a great looking land, but guess what? We can't go there because the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak. Now, the Hebrew word there, Anak, means giants, is what that means. And they go on to say, um, it says, and they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is the land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. And he goes on to say, then we saw the giants, that again, here's the Hebrew word had nephilim. The descendants of Anak came from the giants. So the people of Anak came from the Nephilim, which came from, of course, the fallen angels. And we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. So here we have it again, that we have this genetic corruption going on, and that would seem to be the reason that God said wipe them all out, because they're really, really bad. Well, then we come over to Daniel chapter 2, and you remember, of course, Nebuchadnezzar had this dream, and Daniel is interpreting it for him. And he then says, in these last days, it says, as you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. So it's in the days of these kings, which is going to happen at the end of time, when God sets up the kingdom that shall not be destroyed, of course. So that's, of course, the end times when Jesus comes back. But it's the days of these kings. These kings are they in this sentence right here. They will mingle. All right, and they're going to mingle with the seed of men. Now, again, I go into great detail in my book, Corrupting the Image, and I explain everything that's happening here. This is actually written in Aramaic, and what it goes on to say here is mit arvin. Okay, here's the Aramaic word mit arvin. It's actually in the reflexive, which means that the subject is doing something to himself. So the subject here is they, which we determined are those kings. And so those kings are going to mingle themselves with the seed of men. So that means that these kings, are different than the seed of men. Otherwise, they wouldn't be mingling with the seed of men. They would already be of the seed of men. You can't say you're going to mingle with the seed of men if you're already a man. It just doesn't make any sense. But they are different, and this is borne out when we go to Revelation chapter 17. Here we read about these kings. It says, the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, there you go, who have received no kingdom as yet, but receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. So these kings are different. They're not actually human. They are demonic. They are fallen angels, and they are going to mingle themselves with the seed of men, which is, of course, what we saw happening back in the days of Noah. It's what we saw happening when the children of Israel came into the land of Canaan. And that seems to be what the mark of the beast is going to be. So when we go back then to Revelation chapter 13, and it talks about this mark, and apparently it's the image who's going to make everybody get the mark, and it's going to be the false prophet who will create, or who will give breath to the image, and then the image is going to cause everybody to get this mark, and he'll make sure that everybody worships the beast. All right, so, and it seems to be this three-prong approach, that you have to worship the beast and the image, and you have to take his mark. So it's those three things. If you do those three things, you're absolutely doomed. Now, I do have a pet theory that someone could be forced to take the mark against their will. And from what I understand, according to Bruce Lipton's research, which is called the biology of belief, Bruce Lipton goes into detail explaining how a cell will basically close. In other words, it has these little receptor areas that can allow foreign things in. So let's say when you have a thought, your thought will create either kind of a good or a bad feeling about that, okay? And then your brain then creates a chemical. The chemical then goes down to your cells, and your cells have these little things like antenna, and when they receive a good signal, they open up, they literally have a hole in them, and it will let in this other, substance or chemical, and it will allow it into the interior of the cell. But when the little antenna say, no, that thing is dangerous, or it's negative, then they will literally close the aperture, and that substance, whatever it is, that chemical that came from your brain, cannot go in. So based on that, what I understand is that if somebody were to, just give you the mark of the beast, you're like, no, I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it, then what I'm understanding is that the biology of belief suggests that because I would then be secreting from my brain a negative chemical, whatever that chemical is exactly. But again, watch Bruce Lipton's discussion on that with biology of belief. It's really interesting. But what I'm understanding from that is that basically my cells would close, which would insulate me from this mark of the beast, if I'm correct that it is a DNA change, which I think will be delivered via a virus. So if someone tries to give me this thing and I'm like, I don't want it, then my body would not actually receive it. That again, that's my pet theory. You can take that or leave that. So, I think that the mark of the beast could be forced upon you, and if you have not worshipped the beast or his image, but somebody still forced you to take it, they tied you down and they injected this thing into you, and you're like, I don't want it, then it would have no effect on you. Okay, but that's very, very different than saying, yeah, sign me up for the mark, I'll take it, and I'm going to worship the beast and his image while I'm at it. That's a very different response, because then you are then welcoming this thing into your body, and you are going along with this whole system, and obviously giving it the praise and adoration, which is what the beast and Satan are partly after. So again, check out Bruce Lipton's DVD or his video here on YouTube, which is called The Biology of Belief. It's very interesting. But so can somebody take the mark of the beast? Well, again, my theory here, possibly, if they do not if they do not worship the beast and his image, because that is what Scripture actually says. But if they're just like, yeah, I think I'll take it, it could be fun, and then they go and they worship the beast and his image, you're doomed. Don't do that. Okay, that's very, very bad idea. Now, if you have a choice, do not take the mark of the beast. Okay, but if somebody ties you down and against your will, they inject this thing into you, my theory is that just by the will of not wanting to take this thing, it will have no effect on you. But I'm not suggesting that we should just randomly sign up for it and take it. Not at all. So I'm not teaching that. I am against what John MacArthur is saying. I would do everything in my power to stay away from taking the mark of the beast. If it were forced upon me, what can I do? By me not wanting to take it, I think that it would just pass through my body and have no effect on me. But again, that's just my theory based on some research that I've been doing. Well, that's it for today's Bible Buzz. If the mark of the beast comes knocking, definitely say no. If they tie you down and strap you in, just pray against it, and I think God will protect you. But again, I'm not recommending that you get the mark of the beast. I think it's a bad idea, and I don't think we should be teaching that you can just randomly sign up for it and it's going to be okay, and that God's just like no big deal. Because He says very clearly, if you take this and you worship the image and the beast, right? I did that backwards order there. But if you do those three things, then you're doomed. So we can't get around that. The scripture is very explicit that you can't get around that. So don't do that. All right. Obviously, those three. But obviously, if you happen to know that this is the mark of the beast, then run, and don't go there. Well, again, that's it for this Bible Buzz. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, God bless you and stay in the Word.